Imagine waking up to the news that almost $300 million had vanished overnight. No gunfight, no explosions, no Hollywood-style car chase. Just gone. In a single night in 2007, inside the chaos of Baghdad, thieves walked away with $282 million in cash from a private bank. To this day, no one really knows where the money went, who truly pulled the strings, or whether it was even a robbery at all. Some say it was an inside job by a handful of guards. Others believe it was a staged operation backed by powerful militias or even government officials. And there's a darker theory that the money may never have existed in the first place, and the heist was just a cover for something bigger. This is not just another crime story. This is the tale of one of the largest unsolved bank robberies in history, and it unfolded in the middle of a war zone where billions of US dollars were already vanishing without explanation. Tonight, we're digging into the mystery of the Dar es Salaam Bank robbery, how it happened, who might have done it, and why the truth still remains buried. To understand this heist, you first need to picture Iraq in 2007. The US invasion had toppled Saddam Hussein just a few years earlier, and the country was in chaos. Militias controlled neighborhoods, car bombs shook the streets daily, and corruption ran through almost every level of government. Baghdad was a city of checkpoints, walls, and fear. Banks were overflowing with cash not because the economy was booming, but because Iraq didn't have a stable financial system. Billions of US dollars were being shipped into the country as part of aid packages and reconstruction funds. Instead of electronic transfers, money often sat in vaults as literal stacks of $100 bills. For criminals, it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The Dar es Salaam Investment Bank was a small private bank in Baghdad. It wasn't the largest or most famous institution, but in 2007 it held a staggering amount of US currency. With so much instability outside its walls and weak oversight inside, the bank became a tempting target. This wasn't just a case of stealing from a business. In Iraq, banks symbolized survival. They were lifelines for government projects, for salaries, even for the black market. A successful robbery here wouldn't just make someone rich. It would shake public trust in an already fragile system. And in July 2007, someone decided to make their move. It was the night of July 11, 2007. Baghdad was restless, as it always was during those years, but inside the Dar es Salaam Bank, things seemed quiet. 3 guards were on duty, men trusted to protect the vault and its hundreds of millions in cash. By morning, the bank was stripped bare. $282 million in US dollars, an amount so large that moving it should have required trucks, was gone. No alarms had sounded, no doors were broken, no one outside heard a thing. From the start, investigators knew this was not a typical robbery. There were no signs of forced entry, no smashed locks or drilled safes. The vault had been opened from the inside. That pointed to one conclusion. The very men paid to guard the money were the ones who took it. According to officials, the 3 guards vanished along with the cash. No one saw them flee. No one stopped them at checkpoints. It was as if they had melted into the night, carrying with them a fortune big enough to fund a small army. But here's the part that makes the story stranger. $282 million in cash is physically massive. A single $1 million in $100 bills weighs about 22 pounds. Multiply that by 282, and you're looking at more than 6,000 pounds of money over 3 tons. Could 3 guards really move that much by themselves in one night without anyone noticing? The math didn't add up, and neither did the story. By the time the sun rose over Baghdad, the Dar es Salaam Bank was the site of one of the most shocking financial crimes in Iraq as history. But instead of answers, the robbery only raised more questions. When news of the robbery broke, it spread like wildfire through Baghdad. Ordinary Iraqis were stunned. In a country where most families struggled to afford daily necessities, the idea that someone had walked off with $282 million felt almost unreal. For many, it was another sign that the system was collapsing, that power, money, and corruption always seemed to work hand in hand. Government officials scrambled to respond. The US military, which still had a major presence in Iraq, joined Iraqi security forces in investigating. But there was an immediate problem. The evidence pointed straight to the bank's own guards, who had disappeared. This wasn't an attack from outside. It was betrayal from within. The bank tried to explain what happened, but their statements only raised more suspicion. How could a private institution hold so much money in a war-torn city with such weak security? Why were 3 guards enough to protect such enormous sums of cash? And how could they have possibly moved 3 tons of money through Baghdad without getting stopped? Behind the scenes, officials were embarrassed. The robbery made Iraq's financial system look like a joke. It also highlighted how vulnerable the country was at a time when billions of dollars were flowing in for reconstruction projects. Within days, whispers began to spread. Maybe the guards didn't act alone. Maybe this wasn't just a robbery at all. On paper, the case looked simple. 3 guards betrayed their employer, opened the vault, and vanished with the cash. But when investigators began asking questions, cracks appeared in the story. First, the logistics. $282 million in cash is not something you can toss into a few duffel bags and carry out under your arm. Moving that much would have required vehicles, likely more than one in time. Baghdad in 2007 was crawling with checkpoints, both American and Iraqi. How could the guards have slipped through with trucks loaded with money without anyone noticing? Second, the silence. The guards' families claimed they had no idea where the men had gone. No ransom notes, no ransom demands, no taunting letters to the press. They simply vanished. If they had really acted alone, wouldn't there have been some trace of them trying to spend the fortune? In a country where corruption was rampant and billions of US aid dollars were already untracked, the line between robbery and embezzlement was blurry. Was this a heist, or was it a carefully planned cover-up? The mystery only deepened when investigators tried to follow the money and found nothing at all. After the robbery, the most obvious question was, where did the money go? With such an enormous amount missing, investigators expected to see signs, sudden purchases, unusual movements of cash, or reports of large sums flooding the black market. But nothing surfaced. The US military and Iraqi police launched inquiries, but they hit dead ends almost immediately. In theory, $282 million should leave a trail. But in Iraq's broken economy, it was possible for money to disappear into the shadows without much effort. Cash was king, and corruption was everywhere. Some believed the money was smuggled out of Baghdad within hours, perhaps driven in armored convoys controlled by militias. Others suggested it was quietly absorbed into the country's massive black market, where counterfeit goods, weapons, and oil were traded for cash daily. In that kind of economy, the stolen fortune could have simply dissolved, broken into smaller transactions, impossible to trace. There was also the unsettling theory that the money had never really left the system. Instead, it was hidden in plain sight, sitting in secret accounts controlled by powerful figures. For the average Iraqi, that explanation made sense. They had already seen billions of US reconstruction funds vanish into thin air with no accountability. Why should this be any different? Despite international attention, not a single dollar from the Dar es Salaam robbery was ever recovered. The trail went cold almost immediately, leaving behind nothing but questions. Over time, 4 main theories emerged to explain the Dar es Salaam Bank robbery. Each one sounded convincing, but none could be proven. Theory 1. The guards acted alone. The simplest version of the story is that the 3 guards betrayed their posts, opened the vault, and disappeared. On the surface, it fits. They had the keys, the access, and the chance. But critics point out the flaw. Moving over 3 tons of money through Baghdad without help seems nearly impossible. 3 men, even with a truck, would have struggled to escape detection. Theory 2. A militia orchestrated it. Iraq in 2007 was filled with powerful militias that controlled entire districts of Baghdad. Many had better weapons and organization than the official police. Some believe a militia ordered the guards to hand over the money, using them as scapegoats. If true, the robbery was less about greed and more about financing armed groups in a war-torn country. Theory 3. Government insiders were involved. Another theory points higher. Iraq's government and banking sector were already notorious for corruption. Some suspect that officials staged the robbery themselves, using the guards as a convenient cover story. If true, the missing millions might not have left Baghdad at all. It may have simply changed hands in smoke-filled offices. Theory 4. The money was never there. The most radical theory suggests that the robbery was fiction, invented to hide the fact that $282 million in U.S. aid funds had already been siphoned away. The guards weren't thieves, they were scapegoats for a much bigger embezzlement scheme. Each theory explains part of the puzzle, but none of them fully answers the biggest question: how could so much money vanish without leaving a single trace? In most countries, a robbery of this scale would dominate headlines for months. But in Iraq, 2007 was a year of relentless violence. Car bombings, kidnappings, and battles between militias and U.S. forces filled the news every single day. Against that backdrop, even a $282 million robbery quickly slipped down the list of national concerns. The authorities did announce investigations. The guards were declared fugitives, their names circulated, but no arrests were ever made, and no trials ever took place. As time passed, the robbery seemed less like an active case and more like another unsolved mystery added to Iraq's long list of scandals. There were practical reasons too. Iraq's police forces were underfunded, undertrained, and often infiltrated by the very militias they were supposed to fight. Pursuing a case that might point toward powerful armed groups or corrupt officials was risky. Investigators knew that pushing too far could cost them their lives. Gradually, the Dar es Salaam robbery faded from international headlines. For many Iraqis, it became a story told with a shrug, a reminder of how money and power disappeared in the chaos of war. For outsiders, it was soon overshadowed by bigger global events. But the silence didn't erase the mystery. If anything, it made the unanswered questions louder. Today, the Dar es Salaam Bank robbery still stands as one of the largest unsolved cash heists in history. Unlike stolen art or jewelry, money leaves fewer clues. Bills can be broken down, spent slowly, or hidden away in markets already drowning in untracked cash. That makes this case different from the glamorous heists often told in books and movies. It is a story of money swallowed by chaos. For Iraq, the robbery became more than just a crime. It symbolized the wider loss of trust in institutions during the war years. If hundreds of millions of dollars could disappear from a bank vault guarded by men in uniform, what chance did ordinary citizens have to protect their savings, their businesses, or their future? The missing fortune also became a metaphor for the broader flow of wealth in Iraq. Billions of dollars in reconstruction funds and oil revenues passed through the country during that time, but very little ever reached ordinary people. The Dar es Salaam case was a headline version of a daily reality. Money was constantly vanishing, whether stolen, wasted, or corrupted. And so, more than 15 years later, the robbery lingers like an open wound, one that may never heal because the truth remains buried. Nearly 2 decades have passed, and the Dar es Salaam Bank robbery is still unsolved. 3 guards were blamed, but no one knows if they were masterminds, pawns, or simply convenient scapegoats. The money, $282 million in cold, hard cash, has never resurfaced. Was it a clever inside job that worked better than anyone imagined? Was it a militia operation hidden behind uniforms? Or was the robbery just a cover story for corruption on a much bigger scale? The truth remains locked away, just like the vault that night, opened only for those who knew exactly what they were doing. What we do know is this: the Dar es Salaam robbery is more than a crime story. It's a reminder of how fragile trust can be, and how quickly wealth can vanish when chaos rules the streets. If you enjoy exploring mysteries like this, make sure to subscribe. We have more stories of history's greatest unsolved heists waiting for you.